Hello and thank you for watching Consortium's presentation on diversifying your income. So why is it important to diversify your income? Well, it's not a good idea to be reliant on one source of income. And the reason for that is because if that income source dries up, then you're stuck basically. Your group is at risk of folding or having to close down projects and services, or having to lay off staff if you have staff or paid workers. So ideally a group will have a mix of income from different sources, which will minimise the risk to your organisation and increase your sustainability. If you have lots of different sources of income coming in, you're less likely to struggle financially and more likely to be financially healthy, and be able to plan ahead as well. So for many small groups, we know that grants are the main source of income, and that's fine. You can keep your group going for quite a few years just on grant income if you have different grants from different sources. But at some point, you'll want to look at new ways of generating income, and it's better to do that sooner rather than later, because some forms of income take a long time to build up. So what type of funding should you go for? Well, there's not a one-size-fits-all solution. It depends on the type of organisation you are and your skills and other considerations. Ideally, you should choose a mix of fundraising methods, some that will bring in money quickly and others that will bring in money over the longer term, and also some that will bring in restricted income and some unrestricted, and there'll be another slide that explains those terms. So each group's circumstances are unique, and you need to make time to select the methods that are the best fit for you, not to just do something because somebody else is doing it. It has to really work for your group. And it can be tempting just to try out lots of different types of fundraising to see what works. But this can be a waste of your time and resources, and it's better to take a strategic approach. So it's better to select your methods strategically based on your group's aims, your strengths and your capacity, as I've said. And initially, we would suggest choosing 2 to 4 fundraising methods that you can rinse and repeat, that you can get really good at and do over and over again to have income just coming in more consistently. So if you're a very small group, initially 2 methods, and then as you grow, bring on other methods. So how do you develop your different income streams? So once you've decided on a new fundraising method, do lots of research on it. So read up online. You can use Consortium's resource bank. If you're a member of Consortium, we've got lots of resource sheets and webinars, presentations that you can access. You can seek free or low-cost training. So this could be, again, via Consortium. We often do training. It could be via your local community and voluntary sector organisation. It could be through other organisations such as the Small Charities Coalition or the Foundation for Social Improvement, the FSI. They do free or low-cost training days for small charities or small community groups or organisations. So do lots of research, get some training, and then put your systems in place. So for each method, you probably need some way of recording what you've done and where the money has come from. And initially, you might want to use spreadsheets, but later on, you might want to invest in proper databases. And there are a variety of fundraising databases out there to choose from. You want to train everybody in your team, so your volunteers, your staff, your trustees. Make sure that everybody knows what you're doing, which methods you're using, even if they aren't doing it themselves. And there's 2 reasons for that. One, so they can help and support you, and the other reason is so they don't keep suggesting that you should do other things when you've chosen these 2 to 4 methods. So make sure everybody's on board and is focused in the same direction. And then start small. Take small steps to build up your skills. So maybe give yourself a period of time when you're going to research the method, and then a date when you're going to actually start, so you don't spend too much time researching. And then at regular intervals, so perhaps 3 months, 6 months, a year initially, take stock to see what's working and what isn't. And there's no problem with changing methods if they're not working for you, but some methods take longer to get going, so do give it enough time to work. Okay, so what we'll look at in the rest of this presentation are the strengths and weaknesses of different methods to help you decide which to focus on. So there are a list of the methods we're going to look at here. So a note on restricted and unrestricted funding, as promised. So if you didn't know, restricted income are funds that you raise for a specific use. So when you're applying for funding, when you're asking for donations, restricted income is income that you say we're going to spend it on this specific cause, and you can't spend it on anything else. If you've asked for it for a specific use, you have to spend it on that use. And unrestricted income are funds that you can spend on anything you choose to. So you can use it to run your group or organisation, you can use it for salary costs or to pay sessional workers, you can use it for office costs, etc. Because you haven't specified a specific use for it. So you haven't specified, and then the funder or donor hasn't specified or hasn't given it to you for a particular use. And it's really important, if funding is given to you for a specific use or a specific project, you can't then use it for other things unless you can renegotiate with your funder and go back and ask them if you can allocate it to something else. But without permission, this could be considered a misuse of funds and it could get you into trouble. So let's look at grants, although you may be familiar with this already. So grants are a good way of funding your projects and also raising initial funding to set up services or projects, because charitable trusts and foundations in particular like to fund new things and innovative ideas rather than ongoing services or projects. And because it takes less time and resources than other methods to apply for grants, you get a higher return on your investment. So you put less time in and get more back with grant fundraising. And also you can get multi-year grants from some grant makers for up to 3 to 5 years to run your organisation. And this will be clear on their websites whether you can apply for longer than 1 year. And as it takes time to build up projects or services, we would encourage applying for multi-year grants if a funder allows this. So the downsides of grant fundraising is it can take time to research funders and make sure that the funder is suitable for your project and to write your bids. It can be a long wait while your application is assessed. Sometimes it can take up to 6 months with some funders. They usually say on their website how long they take. And there's also high competition for grants. So if you put in a bid, you won't necessarily get funded, although I'm sure you know that already. And it's usually unrestricted. It's usually restricted funds. So it's for specific projects or specific use, and it's more difficult to fund your running costs or your core costs through grants, although some funders will give you money towards running costs. And although you can get multi-year grants, mostly it's 1-year grants from grant funders. So you always need to be thinking ahead before the end of the project and applying for the next funding. So we would say, 3 to 6 months before the end of a project, be starting to put in your bids for the next cycle. So individual donations, let's look at the strengths and weaknesses. So some of the strengths are, this is usually unrestricted funding from individual donations, unless you've said what you want to spend the money on. You can spend it on your running costs and salaries and office costs and other unrestricted type things. Your individual donations can grow significantly over time and be a reliable source of income, especially if you've asked for monthly direct debits through an individual giving program. Your donors may also support you in other ways, so they could volunteer, or they could fundraise on your behalf, or they could give you other kinds of expert help if they have particular skills. So do ask them and do make friends with your donors. And also some donors may be high net worth individuals, HNWI for short, and with the capacity to give large amounts. So if you have donors giving you larger amounts each month, maybe £50 a month or £100 a month, that's an indication that they might have the capacity to give you more as a lump sum, perhaps. So you may want to read up on major donor fundraising. We don't cover it here, and see how you can cultivate them and start to build the relationship with those donors, so in the future you could ask them for larger amounts, but that's more of a longer term thing. Okay, so weaknesses of individual donations. It can take a while to build up significant reliable income. You get some people that are close to your organisation, or who've already heard of you, who will give you, who could sign up for direct debit straight away. But for others, it may take a while. It requires consistent effort to publicise an individual giving scheme, and to communicate and look after communicate with and look after your donors. So your communication methods need to be well developed and need to give out consistent message about donating. So you need an e-newsletter, and you need social media platforms, so Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, whatever you want to use. And you always need to be thinking about how you can communicate to them that you need funds, and asking them to give, but in creative ways and not just sounding like you're begging. So you might want to read up on how communication for fundraising. You might want to look at what other organisations do as well and borrow some of their techniques. And if you want to build up an individual giving program, so you're getting regular donations, you'll need a budget for publicity and perhaps also for donor events, because it's good to have events where you tell potential donors about your organisation to encourage them to give, and also have thank you events for your regular donors, maybe once a year or so. So corporate partnerships. So this is partnerships with businesses. Corporate partnership is usually thought of as partnership with big companies, but here this includes smaller companies or smaller local businesses as well. So the strengths of partnering with businesses. You can raise unrestricted income, so that's money you can use as you wish for your group or organisation, unless you seek sponsorship for a specific project or event. So sometimes you will go to a business asking for them to support a specific event or a specific project. So that would be restricted in that case. There is potential for large donations towards your work, so 5,000, 10,000, 15,000, 20,000 plus, perhaps, depending on your need and depending on the business and how well matched you are. You may get other kinds of support, so companies or businesses usually like to also offer other things as well as, or instead of, donating. So a partnership is not just about funding. So you can get free products or services, free expertise, free venues for your events and that kind of thing. And if you build a good relationship, this could turn into multi-year support, a multi-year partnership longer term for you. And having a partnership with a business can help you raise your profile and attract other support, because they'll be publicising it as well. But it takes time to build relationships with businesses or to formally apply for support if there's a formal application process. It takes time to manage the relationship. Ideally, you'd have one person managing a relationship with each business. and checking in with them regularly, and making sure that they're happy. Larger companies usually prefer to partner with larger charities. So smaller groups often say, well, why would a company be interested in us? Well, larger companies do have local branches or local stores, or local offices that you can apply to or inquire there if for support. But there's also local business support. So don't overlook your smaller local businesses, especially those in your local vicinity. Sometimes they will only give you one-off support, especially if they're sponsoring an event or a project. So it's not always multi-year or long-term. That's another weakness. So crowdfunding is becoming increasingly popular with LGBT plus groups, mostly because of the barriers to more traditional fundraising routes, more traditional ways of bringing in income. Crowdfunding is a kind of a DIY, do it yourself, do it quick, do it innovatively and creatively type of fundraising methods. And it can be good for all types of and all sizes of groups and organisations. So some of the strengths of crowdfunding, it can be a really quick way to fund a project or activity, because crowdfunding campaigns are time limited, usually between 1 and 3 months. So within a couple of months you could have a substantial amount of money. You can raise a few £1,000s with crowdfunding in a short period of time. So I've seen groups raise up to £6,000 to £7,000 in a relatively short period of time for a particular project. It's relatively easy to set up. So all you need is to log on to the website, make sure you've met all their criteria and that you qualify. Set up on a crowdfunding website, that is. And you also, because you're publicising your crowdfunding campaign and lots of people are seeing it, hopefully, it encourages other community engagement and support of your cause. So it could bring other kinds of support in. But the weaknesses of crowdfunding, which shouldn't be underestimated, it's one-off support. So it's a short, limited campaign, though you could encourage donors to sign up for regular giving. So if they've given their email address, when you email to thank them, you could put a link to your newsletter and ask them to sign up to your newsletter, ask them to like your Facebook page, follow you on Twitter, that kind of thing. If because of GDPR and data protection, that's really your only window, your only chance to get them to sign up to other things. You can't keep using that email address they've given you and keep emailing them about other things longer term. So use that thank you email to just try to take them on to the next step. But crowdfunding can be very time consuming to run an event, and it can be even a full-time project for a few months. So you may need one person dedicated to it for the time the campaign's running and during the planning stage as well. And also, although this is becoming less common, some crowdfunding sites won't release the money if you don't meet your target. So make sure you choose the right crowdfunding site to make sure you get all the money even if you don't meet your target. And crowdfunding is usually restricted income, so it's usually for a specific use as well. Okay, let's move on to events. So the strengths of events are it's usually unrestricted income, so money you can use as you choose. You can raise hundreds or even thousands of pounds with one event if it's a really well planned mass event with lots of people involved. And you can raise money in different ways from one event as well. So you may charge an entry fee or a ticket fee. You could have a raffle, you could have a bucket collection, you could be selling food and drink. If the spectators are coming along to watch an event, you could be selling them stuff or collecting from them as well. So when you do your budget for an event, make sure you include lots of different ways of raising funds. You could also get sponsorship for the event to cut down some of your costs from a business, for example, or businesses might give you free stuff, so they might donate some food or drink, they might donate a venue, or they might donate other things you need for your event. If successful, you can repeat the event to raise more money. So if you do an event that brings in a lot of money and that you felt is quite relatively easy to organise, you can repeat it again in 6 months or a year, depending on the type of event and the appetite of people around you. And if you think you're going to get people to come, you can repeat it more often. So weaknesses of events. It can take time to organise events, and there's lots to consider. For example, there are lots of logistical considerations, health and safety and risk assessments, publicity for the event and bookings. So it can be a quite complex process. There is lower return on investment than some methods because you often have to spend more money and also put in more time to organise an event than you would, for example, to write a funding bid. And you'll need plenty of volunteers, especially on the day, but you may also need volunteers beforehand. So an event is quite a big undertaking. Okay, so let's talk about membership schemes or friends of schemes. And these started off in arts organisations mainly, in theatres and galleries and performance spaces, but now other kinds of groups and organisations and charities are taking them on. So the strengths of a membership or friends of scheme is that it can bring in unrestricted income. So the subscription rate or the fee that the friend or the member pays to you can be used for anything you choose, for your office costs and things like that. So if you build the scheme over time and you get lots of people signing up to be members or friends, there's a potential for a good income and for a significant chunk of your annual operating costs to be covered. And also, friends or members are more likely to become super fans who will give you longer term support, who will donate to you, advocate for you, and also promote your group or organisation. And you will have a ready-made group of donors to consult with and test new initiatives with. Now, some organisations have service users as members or friends, and so the membership there can quite immediately be used to consult with and test new services or new projects or new ideas on. But also, if your members or your friends are not your service users, if they're outside external people, you can still consult with them and ask them what they would like to see. And members may also volunteer or provide other types of support. So weaknesses of friend schemes. So friends or members pay you a fee, but this is unlikely to be your main source of income unless you build a really popular scheme. So it can be part of your income, but it won't cover all of your operating costs. It takes time to publicise and manage a scheme. You need to source or provide special benefits for members. So membership schemes and friends of schemes usually give something in return. So if it's a theatre, for example, people will often get free tickets or free tickets to a cinema if they're friends of their local cinema, for example, or a gallery, they'll get access to exhibitions. But what can you offer back? So you'll have to think of what you can provide back in return for the membership fee, and it may be that you get a local business to offer something to your members. So even if you can't provide anything directly, that's a way of getting local businesses involved. So it often involves some money up front. So for example, for producing promotional materials or for other kinds of member benefits and events that you might have to pay for. and it may not be suitable for certain types of group. So it depends how closely you want others involved in your group. So these are donors, members and friends are donors who are more closely involved with you in your group, and you have a closer relationship with them. So that may not be right for your group. So let's talk about public sector commissioning, and this is where you get a contract from the local council or from government or from the NHS or other public sector body to deliver a service on their behalf. So commissions are often multi-year, though it depends on annual budget setting and your performance. So even if you get a multi-year commission or contract, it can still be subject to review every year. So commissions help you meet the costs of running specific services or meeting particular needs. They're often very specific. And you can build up a good reputation and profile. So commissioners may come back to you to offer you other opportunities, or they may have some money available for a particular project and call upon you because you've delivered well in the past. And a public sector commission is also a chance to partner with other organisations. So if you're a small group, you might want to partner with a larger group within the LGBT plus sector or outside of it to deliver a project collaboratively. And often that's a chance for smaller groups to get involved in commissioning. So if you have got a larger LGBT plus or other organisation around you. So it might be your local Mind, it might be a carers organisation, it might be something like Age UK or a local older people's organisation. They may want an LGBT aspect of their project or their commission, particularly if you're in an area where the local authority is keen to commission LGBT services. Partnering with a larger organisation may help you get a foot on that particular ladder. But the downsides to commissioning, it can be a lengthy process and it can be time intensive. So you may have to go to meetings and information events, and there may be lots to read in the commissioning document. So it can take quite a bit of time. The monitoring and reporting requirements are usually strict, and they can be quite demanding for a small group. So the commissioners will usually set very specific outcomes or KPIs, key performance indicators. So that's another advantage of partnering with a larger group, because they will often take on the monitoring for the whole commission, even if they have lots of smaller groups involved. Often the larger organisation will take on the monitoring and reporting. So you're measured on outcomes and performance, and so you're always kind of under review, and you're always kind of being watched and being monitored by the commissioners or by the larger organisation who's managing the project. And smaller groups may be overlooked unless you partner with larger organisations. So as I said, it's a good way for smaller groups to get involved in commissioning and in local authority contracts by partnering with large organisations. So do have a think who is in your area. Maybe speak to your local commissioners. So ring up the council or ring up the NHS and find out who the commissioners are that commission community organisations in your area to deliver services. And then you can ask them who the currently contracted organisations are, and any potentials for partnership. And your local community and voluntary sector organisation, or CVS, should also be able to give you that information too. So let's talk about trading. So trading is selling your expertise. So for example, training, selling products, running events that are not fundraising events. They're more like kind of arts performances or exhibitions, things like that, that people will pay money to come to, and you will make money from. Running a cafe, a community cafe, or something like that, or running a shop, for example, a charity shop. So all of those things are trading options, and they're opportunities for bringing in unrestricted income. So they're more likely kind of social enterprise or CIC activities. And for CICs, trading can be a core activity and helps you fund your charitable work. And indeed, some people say trading should be a core activity and you shouldn't be relying on grants and things to run your community interest company, although it does take time to build up your trading income. So you can become a sustainable business, in inverted commas, and with a healthy income through trading. And it can be an opportunity to be more creative and to sell goods and services that you wouldn't get grants for or other funding for. So you're not so tied to what you're delivering for funders. You can be creative. There's a lot more freedom there with trading. But there are also rules around trading for charitable organisations. So make sure you check the Charity Commission or other regulations properly. It takes time to develop your services and products and your business, so it's not a quick win. And it's good to have some business knowledge or some good business advice or a good business plan before you begin. Often you need to be really strategic. You need to have done a budget and know your numbers and know that you can actually bring money in, especially if you're investing some money to start up. And also, particularly if you're a smaller group, it can take your time and energy away from your charitable work. So there has to be a balance there. Your trading is to support your charitable work. It shouldn't become your main activity, because then that's also breaking the regulations. So social investment. So this may be a good option for social enterprises, or if you're taking a more business-like approach, because it helps you to think about how you're going to make money and how you're going to pay it back, because social investment is usually in the form of a loan or other money that's given to you, and then the investor wants a return. So it may, and a loan or a social investment may help you to build up your trading income and become sustainable. So it may be part of funding your trading and your startup. An investor may also contribute in other ways. So often they have an interest in social outcomes. That's why it's social investment rather than just a loan that you would get from the bank. So often they may want to mentor you or coach you, invite you to workshops, invite you to network with other organisations, things like that. So the weaknesses of social investment is that you have to pay it back. So you're not just given money like a grant, you're going to have to pay it back. Some investors like to see social outcomes, so they will be more bothered about what your group is achieving in terms of your social outcomes rather than having to pay every penny back. So make sure that you know what your investors' motivations and approaches and what their requirements are. Smaller organisations may struggle to find investment. It's usually larger organisations that are invested in. And it can be confusing as there are different types of investment available. So there may be bonds, there's social impact bonds, loans, payment by results. So it's a bit of a minefield, and Consortium has been doing a project about social investment, so we can provide more advice if this is something you're interested in. And also, again, like public sector commissioning, there are usually strict monitoring and reporting requirements, and the investor will be kind of watching you closely and seeing what you're doing and just making sure they're going to get a return on their investment. And again, it can take focus away from your charitable aims. So if you're trying to kind of set up a business with a loan, or if you're worrying about your monitoring or your reporting, or the investor puts kind of key performance indicators on you that are kind of not aligned with what you want to do in terms of your charitable work, it can take the emphasis away from your charitable aims, and it can result in a bit of mission drift, perhaps. Okay, so legacies, we're almost there. So Legacies are large sums of money that are given to you in somebody's will, and they can keep your group going for several years if you get a big legacy given to you. So this is usually unrestricted unless the person giving you the money has specified a particular project or cause that they want the money to go to, which they sometimes do. And it can take a relatively low level of work to develop and administer a legacy program. So again, there's a high return on investment. And also, receiving one legacy usually encourages others to leave money to you in their wills. So if you get one legacy, you can publicise that, and it will often lead to other people pledging support for you as well. There's likely to be a long wait between somebody making a pledge while they're living to leave you a legacy, or somebody making their will, to you receiving the funds. So they may make their will in their 40s, 50s, or even 60s, and it may be 20, 30, 40, 50 years before your group sees a return on that. And also it can be unpredictable. So somebody might pledge to leave you a legacy, but you won't know that they have. So you can't predict. So you can't predict when the money will come in or if it will come in. So a gift may also be legally complex. Sometimes lawyers might have to do quite a bit of work on distributing money from an estate, and gifts might be challenged by relatives, for example. So again, it may take time to get to you. And you usually have to invest time in building good relationships with supporters and service users in the first place in order to receive legacies from them. So you won't usually get strangers leaving you a legacy. They've usually got some kind of relationship or investment in your organisation. Okay, so cash collections. So these are bucket collections or collection tins that you leave in places, in shops and bars. So you can collect hundreds of pounds in a day in a bucket collection, depending on the location. And you can collect maybe a few £100 in a year if you leave a collection tin somewhere where lots of people are likely to put money into it. It's quite easy to do at an event, or somewhere else that you're already doing some fundraising to collect extra cash. You can get your service users and trustees involved, and it's also a good activity to offer to corporate volunteers. So businesses often want to get their staff involved in things, and you can get them involved in bucket collections and ask them to compete in teams sometimes to raise funds. They like doing that. So downsides, you'll need permission and possibly a license, unless you're collecting on your own premises or at an event that you've organised and that you've hired a venue for. You'll need permission to leave a collection tin or to collect on private land or in the street. So quite a few volunteers are needed for bucket collections. You'll need somebody to give out the collection tins, so to take them around to shops or businesses and bars and things, and then to gather them up again in a timely fashion. And also it's cash, and it's at risk of being stolen. So collection tins are often stolen from shops and bars unless they're chained down properly. And also, if you're collecting money in buckets, you have to be really careful with how you collect that, how you keep it safe, how you banking it straight away or as soon as possible, keeping it safe overnight if it's an evening event, that kind of things. And also you often have to buy the tins or buckets in the first place, although you could borrow them. So ask other charities, particularly ones that have similar colours to you in their branding, because they'll often have branded colours for their buckets and tins. So here are some examples based on our members' experiences of using these different methods. So one group raised a sixth of their annual income through membership. This was a fairly well developed membership scheme that's been going on for a few years. So they were raising £17,000 a year through membership. So another member partnered with a local business. So it was an LGBT plus business. and the business donated £25 every time it signed up an LGBT plus client. And in return, the business was promoted to LGBT plus people, so it was a win-win situation. So another group raised around £1,500 to take young people to Trans Pride in Brighton through crowdfunding. So there was a member who sold LGBT plus inclusion training to local care agencies, so dealing with LGBT older people. And so another group that we're aware of had a comedy night, and this is something they do regularly, and raised £800 through ticket sales and a bucket collection. And we've also heard that a member has had a big legacy that's enabled them to hire new staff and to continue with the project. So which fundraising methods appeal to you the most after listening to the presentation today? And which fundraising methods appeal to you the least? It might be worthwhile pausing this presentation and just taking some time to make some notes on these questions. Which methods do you think best suit your skills or the skills of other people in your group? And if you had to choose one quick win method and one longer term method, which do you think you would choose? And also, if you had to pick one restricted income method and one unrestricted income method, which would you choose? And what can you do this week to start diversifying your income? So thanks for watching this presentation, and if you'd like more guidance on fundraising or any other aspect of running your group, remember that we're always here. You can always email us at admin@lgbtconsortium.org.uk. Good luck with your fundraising.